I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's nice to see everyone here today. We'll start off with roll call. Josh Feldman.
Here.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Nice to have you back. Brian Leibel.
Here.
Amy's going to be a few minutes late. I think I hear her shoes now. Kaylee McDonald.
Here.
Scott Johnson.
I'm here.
Peter Bellanti.
Here.
Musab.
Here.
Welcome back to you too. Marianne Jason, I am here. Motion to accept roll.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next is our public hearing regarding tax exemption for volunteer firefighters and volunteer ambulance workers. Mr. Feldman.
Sure, just give me just a second. Mr. Genestri, or Dr. Genestri, will you share your screen?
It conked out on me, so I will go right now. Steps here. Okay. Apple TV.
Virgil's Apple TV. You have to be on the Virgil's Wi-Fi network.
That part I always remember.
By June, we'll get it right. Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to take a few minutes to talk about the volunteer firefighter EMT property tax exemption, which is established in Real Property Tax Law 466A. Members of local fire departments were here last month talking about the legislation. I'll give you a brief kind of synopsis of the legislation and then open it up to any questions that either the board or the audience has. So the legislation highlights are quite simple in 3 bullet points. It provides up to a 10% property tax exemption of assessed value for volunteer firefighters and or ambulance workers. Tax exemptions are available to all taxing jurisdictions, including school districts, obviously, which Sweet Home is. And it was signed into a law at the New York State level as a recruitment and retention tool for the first responder community. Eligibility requirements for folks that might be take part in the property tax exemption. The primary residence and must be owned by the volunteer firefighter and or ambulance worker, must be located within the jurisdiction served by the fire company, fire department, or ambulance entity. Volunteers must have at least 2 years of volunteer service to qualify, and the fire district or the ambulance company must certify eligible volunteers of that organization that service requirements are met. And then the individual must fill out an exemption application with the town. Both towns, the town of Tonawanda and the town of Amherst, would have those available at the assessor's office. So additional benefits of the legislation: property tax exemptions become permanent for a volunteer firefighter and ambulance worker for 20 years of service, so long as the residence remains the volunteer's primary residence. The property tax exemption is extended for the lifetime of a surviving unmarried spouse of a deceased volunteer if the deceased volunteer served at least 20 years. And it also holds a line of death duty in the event of a firefighter, ambulance worker, EMT worker. If they were killed in the line of duty, the tax exemption would remain in place for an unremarried spouse or partner. What does it have in terms of a fiscal impact to Sweet Home Central School District? First of all, Sweet Home, there are many other school districts in the area that are considering the exemption. Amherst, I believe it's on their agenda for this month. The Williamsville Central School District did adopt this exemption back in March. There's no real direct fiscal impact to the district. In other words, it doesn't negatively impact what the district is allowed or our ability to levy taxes or collect property taxes to fund our operational needs and or requirements. From a property tax payer standpoint, the exemption for a firefighter or a police or ambulance or EMT worker decreases the overall taxable assessed value within the Sweet Home Central School jurisdiction. The district's tax levy would be distributed then amongst the remaining taxable assessed value, resulting in a slightly increased tax rate for our taxpayers. And in essence, because of the number of firefighters and those that are available for the exemption, it doesn't have a significant impact on our taxpayers whatsoever from that standpoint. So what we're asking the Board of Education to do, we're bringing forward this resolution. It's in your board packet tonight that would allow for Sweet Home Central School District to opt into the property tax exemption for firefighters and ambulance/EMT workers. The tax exemption percentage would be 10%, so long as the years of volunteer service requirement to be eligible for the exemption are met on behalf of the individual, and that either the firehouse or the ambulance or EMT company certifies the individual for the exemption, as well as the local assessor does as well. And if that were the case, then they would be allowed to receive the exemption on their school property taxes for tax bills in the 23-24 school year. This would suffice as a public hearing. So I guess at this point, if the board has any questions of me or the audience has any questions regarding the exemption, we'd be happy to entertain those now.
And again, who handles all the paperwork for this?
So who handles all the paperwork? The individual would have to file paperwork at the town assessor's office, depending on where they live, either in the town of Tonawanda or the town of Amherst. The assessor would process it, and they would then get certified at the either the firehouse in which they are a volunteer firefighter, or at the ambulance or EMT company. And once that's processed, then they let the county know, who processes our tax bills, and they would be given that exemption.
Anyone else have any questions?
You asked mine.
Thank you. I know they mentioned it last time, but it just didn't stick in my mind. Can we open it up
Of
to our
course.
community? Any questions?
So the state, it's a piece of legislation that came down from the state. The town of Amherst has adopted it. They've adopted it at the town level, and then it's up to the individual jurisdiction as to whether they'd like to adopt it. 20-year service going forward. What to become permanent, that's correct.
Anyone else have any questions? I can't think of a more deserving group
I agree.
to receive this.
So again, it's on your agenda for consideration to discuss tonight. And then you would vote on it at your next meeting, which would be Tuesday, May the 9th. And hereby closes our budget hearing, or not our budget hearing, our firefighter EMT hearing.
Let's go on to the budget hearing.
I'm moving right along. Okay, so this is a part of our annual budget study process. Our budget was approved by the Board of Education at their April study, or at their April voting meeting on April the 18th. This is an annual public hearing where we present the budget that will be voted on here in this room on Tuesday, May the 16th from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The budget, the proposed budget, 23-24 budget is $96,886,588. So just some key points to that budget. It maintains all current programming at all levels in all school configurations. In fact, it adds to staffing to address additional instructional needs across the district. We've added an elementary special education teacher, a district-wide behavior specialist, a part-time E&L teacher, a part-time high school tech teacher, one full-time and one part-time social worker, and a full-time public relations professional. It also maintains our annual bus purchases. We are doing 4 large and 2 small bus purchases this time around. And we're happy to report that the budget is tax neutral, which means that the tax levy that we currently have collected for this budgetary year, $53,321,588, would be what we collect next year. So I'll caution everybody as we get started, it is tax neutral. Obviously, assessment levels have not been released by either town, nor have equalization rates. So I would expect that your tax bills would be similar to what they are presently. They may swing a couple of dollars here or there depending upon assessments and equalization rates. Those typically come out in the summertime before we set our tax rates in August. The budget does include the use of $1.1 million in reserve funds to make the budget tax neutral. Again, we saw an increase of about over $5.5 million in state aid, both foundation aid and expense-driven aid. And after discussion with the board, we felt as though that it was, if there was ever a time to do this and to be able to utilize some of our reserve funds, this was the year to do it. So 23-24 proposed budget again is $96,886,588. The current budget, the 22-23 budget, is $89,351,588. The budget to budget increase is $7,535,000, which represents an 8.4% increase. So part of our requirement is that we must present the budget in 3 parts. The first part is the administrative budget. The administrative budget covers everything from the Board of Education, the Superintendent's Office, curriculum and staff development, and supervision, administrative supervision and support in each of our schools. Program is the largest chunk of our budget. It's the instructional component of our budget that includes all teachers' salaries, guidance counselors, psychologists, and related staff as far as that goes. It also includes all of our transportation costs, both in-house transportation costs and contracted transportation costs. And then lastly, the capital portion, it includes buildings and ground salaries, equipment, vehicles, and the like, but also includes debt service. So if you hit the next slide, Dr. Genestri, you'll see kind of a comparison, a year-to-year comparison from the administrative side. We're up from 7.1 million to 7.486 million, which is fairly consistent with where we've been in years past. Our program budget has increased from 68,646,616 to 73,860,212. And that really is threefold. Number one, we settled a new contract with all of our service employees. We are anticipating a contract settlement with our teachers for next year. And third, we've seen about a $2 million increase in our contracted transportation costs. So that is the reason really for that significant jump in that program area. And then in the capital area, we've gone from 13,575,000 to 15,539,000 this year. And that's due in part because we've seen about a $1.8 million increase in our debt service, which means that our current project is starting to hit the books. Next slide. This just looks at a kind of a bar graph in terms of where we are in percentages from an administrative program and capital standpoint. So we've remained relatively consistent across the board there. So on the revenue side, this kind of gives you in chart format, basically where we make our revenue budget from. Real property taxes, which is the tax levy, represents 55% of our budget. State aid is 33.2%. Use of reserve and fund balance is 3.8%. Debt reserve is 0.8%. Sales tax is 4.6%, and the rest of other things, including pilots and tuitions and interest, make up the remaining 2.6%. So on the revenue side of the budget, as I mentioned to you before, we had about a $5.4 million increase in foundation aid and expense-driven aids. This is the first year that's based upon the basic foundation aid formula that New York State sets out, that Sweet Home Central School District is fully funded. We've not been fully funded in years past, and that gets us to a fully funded dollar figure based upon their formula. When we started back in January, really looking at the budget, when we first presented to you in February at our initial budget projections, we kind of laid out that we thought our sales tax would kind of project at about $3.9 million over the course of the year. We've had our third quarter number come in, and it's significantly higher than even we expected. So we are increasing our sales tax projections by about $600,000 to $4.5 million. And then, as I mentioned before, we are using $1.1 million in our reserves to close the gap and make the 23-24 budget tax neutral. This just kind of takes a look at where we are with debt service funding in regards to our capital project. You've seen that we've kind of hit an uptick in debt service this present year to we've gone from in 2021-22 $6 million to 22-23 $6.1 million this year. Next year we will be closer to about $7.3 million in debt service funding, and we've utilized our debt service reserve to kind of help offset some of the costs that we pass on to the taxpayer. So the proposed tax levy, again, it is a tax neutral budget, which means our tax levy stays the same at $53,321,588. It's a $0 tax levy increase. It's a 0% tax levy percentage increase. Obviously, it probably goes without saying, but the proposed tax levy that we are putting forth falls within the New York State tax cap, which means the proposed budget only needs a simple majority to pass on May 16th, Tuesday, 2 weeks from tonight. Just for the good of the cause, based upon our calculation, which we presented as part of the budgetary process, we do have an allowable tax cap of 7.12%, which is about $3.6 million that we could have increased our overall tax levy. Obviously, after discussions and deliberations based upon the state money coming in, as well as where we were financially, we felt as though that this was the year to go tax neutral and keep our tax levy the same. So this is kind of a snapshot of tax bills. Again, as I cautioned everybody kind of where we were early on in the process. We've not gotten information on equalization rates from either of the towns, nor have we gotten information on the assessment rates. But if the tax levy were to remain the same and everything were to remain the same on an average home right now for the 22-23 school year, there is a tax rate established in August of $15.68 per thousand, which translates to an estimated tax bill of $2,352. And then on the Tonawanda side, the tax rate again is $40.25, which translates to a tax bill of $2,234. Those tax bills are before basic star savings. Basic star savings on the Amherst side is $397, and on the Tonawanda side, $391. So when we come to the polls, again, polls are here at district office in the Virgil Center in the room that we are presently from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Tuesday, May the 16th. There'll be two propositions. District residents will be asked to approve to vote on rather the proposition of the budget for 23-24, $96,886,588. As I did mention before, it is a budget to budget increase of 8.4%. However, it is a tax neutral budget, meaning that our tax levy remains the same from the current year. And then folks will also be asked to vote for one Board of Education member to a 5-year term that would expire on June 30th of 2028. And the term of Mr. Scott Johnson expires here in June. So at this point in time, I would ask if the board or anybody in the community has any questions about the budget. Yes.
Or just stand.
You
up
can
so we
stand right up and just state your name and ask the question.
I just have a question about the budget and,
Of course.
I'm just wondering, that electrical bus, is that in that budget or was it last year?
The electrical bus.
Finance of the grant that you were.
So we haven't purchased an electric bus yet. The buses that we are proposing to purchase are diesel buses. So in the state budget, the governor has outlined a timeline where all of our vehicles that we purchase for transportation need to be zero emission. Those start in 2027 and all of our fleet needs to be done by 2035. As part of the process, we need to have what's called an electrification plan that is put in place where we work in conjunction with our utility provider, National Grid, to put that together. So we're in that process now. And then we would probably look to, we're in a couple of queues for funding to purchase electric buses, not this summer, but next summer, 2024. Nope,
This year, last year, or?
not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. You're welcome. Sure. Any other questions at all? Go ahead. Sure.
Brandon Beckenhausen. Can you please clarify why the board adopted the budget? By $8.4 tax neutral levy. How did you do that? Why? Where did you find the new money? What raise?
Sure. First of all, on the revenue side of the budget, we've seen, again, an increase in state aid from year to year of about $5.4 million. So that is $5.4 million in basic foundation aid, as well as expense-driven aid. Okay. And then we're also increasing from year to year. We are increasing our sales tax projections by over $600,000. And then lastly, we are using $1.1 million in reserve usage to close that budgetary gap. Dirk? Sure.
Aw.
Rest in peace.
I remember this slide. Brought in a lot of money. Years ago.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
all this money
Yep.
you use,
Well, why don't you finish asking your question, and then I'll try and address it.
it's in use.
Yep.
A question is,
Correct.
then beyond that, I'm trying to figure out. That to. That program. then what happens beyond that? Nice, by the way, have to tax. Audit says that maybe.
So, okay, so I'll give you kind of three parts here. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Sure, sure.
Sales taxes. You end up cutting back on half, offset that for the burden of the taxpayer.
Sure. So to answer your question, first and foremost, in regards to, you're not wrong. We had a number of federal funds that came in, CARES Act 1, CARES Act 2, and the American Rescue Plan Act. Some of that money we did use to add staff to address class sizes and the like in respect to COVID and kind of decreasing classroom sizes. The CARES Act, the original CARES Act is closed, so we're buttoned up there. CARES Act 2 closes on September 30th of this year. Excuse me, of this year, 2023, and the American Rescue Plan closes on September 30th of 2024. So some of salaries are included in that act, but one of the stipulations of each of those acts are if you add staff, when that money goes away, which it's going to go away in September for the second CARES Act, and in September of 24 for the American Rescue Plan Act, that anybody that you hire needs to be absorbed by the general fund. And we've worked very hard with the board, and we're at a point now where that is the case. So everybody that is in a budget right now is in the general fund budget. Now, this current year, we brought forth about almost $6 million in additional fund balance in the unallocated fund balance, because at this time last year, we had not settled the service employees contract. We didn't know what that was going to look like, nor did we know what our contracted transportation numbers would look like, because we lost so many bus drivers. So we settled with the service employees contract. We also, as I mentioned earlier, saw about a $2 million increase in our contracted transportation that wasn't budgeted for. So we brought forward that money. So in the end, I feel we're pretty good as to where we are to be able to maintain our programs as we go forward. I will also say that we expect a number of teacher retirements in the near future to kind of help offset potentially shortfalls in state aid. Okay. Yes, sir. That's a great question. I don't want to, our overall reserve balances, we have a number of different reserves. I can certainly get you more specific information as to where we are now. But our overall reserve balances are in the neighborhood of about $7.5 million. What I will also say is that the budget, this present year's budget, is performing well, that the money that we brought forward from last year's budget, the $1.6 million that I told Mr. Rabinold about, I would expect that a significant portion of that money will also be put into reserves for next year. So we believe that the net impact of using that money will be zero to our reserve balances. The floor is yours. Yep. So here's what I'll say to that question. There's the unallocated fund balance that was referenced in the state controller's audit. There's two pieces to it. The $1.6 million that I told you about, that again, that will more than likely, it's decided in August, obviously, when we do our tax rate, and the board would vote on the reserve kind of allocations, but I would imagine that money is going to go into reserves. So that'll be taken away from the unallocated fund balance. The other piece of the unallocated fund balance that put us over the 4% statutory limit deals directly with 105H money. 105H money, which is kind of a health fund for our employees. It used to be housed in a trust, an agency account, and the state government said that we can't do that any longer. We solicited opinions from our own auditing firm, and they indicated that the best way to kind of handle that money was to put it into the unallocated fund balance. We presented that to the board. The board was in agreement, and the board voted on it in August. Based upon the findings of the I certainly, we've not talked about it at the board level, but based upon the findings of the state controller's audit, we're working with our auditing team to find another way to do that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Don't remember. But. Yeah, we do have a history. This isn't a nice question, is it?
No, I'll address it. I can only speak for the portion that I've been in this seat. And what I'll say is, and if you've read the report, 2.5, almost 3 years of this snapshot in time was a global wide pandemic. We were planning for quote unquote normal years. And when normal years didn't happen, of course we were overestimated. I will say that, we've addressed it and we've looked at it a little bit more closely from the revenue side. This year, you'll see that we've increased our sales tax projections. I feel pretty good about where we are on the expense side in terms of those types of things. Obviously, time will tell. I can't tell you where we are, but we took the report very seriously from my seat, and we're working towards being better. Means a lot. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I got you. Yes, ma'am.
How is a way that like the average taxpayer could let you know it?
Well, the forum would be here to be able to do something like that. They could
By voting?
then by voting. Yep, by voting certainly is another way.
How is the budget done historically?
So the budget is historically, we've had this excellent support from our community. The last time a school district budget was voted down would have been in 1977.
If I could
I
just.
think
say
it's,
something.
I'm sorry, I think it's important to note, your point is
He left.
Want to hear the rest.
the point was valid about under projection, over projection on expense and revenue. But I think it's important, what I was going to make for Dirk, is that we're talking 1% to 2% in the middle of a global pandemic. Fair? I mean, that's right.
That's
1% to
correct.
2%
That's
and
correct.
$100 million budget. That's pretty darn close.
And it was also projected that we would lose 20% of our funding in that first few months of COVID. And that's what we were preparing for. So
Correct.
I mean, if you could get your crystal ball out,
Well,
maybe we could be at 100% every time.
no,
but
I
Margin for error.
we are very fortunate to be supported by our community. As I mentioned, it's been since 1977. I, again, would put our tax rates up against anybody in Western New York. And to be able to maintain the program that we do, I think it should be something that we're all very proud of.
Absolutely.
And, I think
I'm sorry.
just
I
another,
just-
go
Go
ahead.
You go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, well, you had your question out there in your comment. We started the budget process back in January. Every single budget meeting is open to the public.
Right, that's
So,
my- that was my
so
point.
yeah, come. It'd be great to have people. Absolutely, because normally there's 0 people. It's us sitting at the table. So it'd be great to have community members come and offer their opinions. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to add that, it's important for people to also understand that there's a lot of moving pieces, right? Like we're working with numbers that to some degree are being estimated from the state. The state just, they haven't passed their budget yet, so, and yet they're requiring us to do certain things using assumptions. So, I think that's, important to note that some of these requirements by the state, we do have to make estimates, and then the following year we're adjusting. But this tax neutral piece, it's also important for everybody to understand that it's not just a one-time benefit, that the following year increases are based on the prior year. So this 4% roughly, right, that's around $100 of reduction or tax assessment that wouldn't be there on a $2,500 tax bill. Well, that's $100 year in and year out. So the next year there's $100. Instead of $2,500 or $2,600, it's going to be $2,500 that we're starting with as the average taxpayer, upon which you can increase the levy. So 10 years out, that's about $1,200 when you account for the compounding effect of interest and whatnot. So it's not immaterial, it can add up.
No, yeah. And again, to your point, when we come to this point in the road next year, we'll use that number, that 53,321,588 to base next year's tax cap off. It's not an arbitrary number. It's based on the current year going forward.
And just to Brian's point, as an example, we were anticipating how many bus drivers at one point? 100 and.
We had in 4 years ago, we had 103 bus drivers. We're down to 57 now.
So
We're
having to pay
catching up a little bit.
103, and we never got that. So now we're down to 52. So there's going to be a difference
Yeah,
right
we had a lot
there.
of drivers post-pandemic simply just walk out the door.
Swap. So. Anyone else have any comments?
Thank you. And
Yeah.
kudos.
Your whole office.
Oh, no,
Thank you.
I look at, it's a lot of work and you guys are in the middle of it all. So I appreciate the support and the help, and come out and vote on the 16th. Which brings us to.
How
our-
about we go out there
Yeah,
and
so
let our-
what I'd like to be able to do is if the folks on the board could kind of come out. Mr. Johnson, you can stay where you are. Brandon, if you want to take a seat somewhere up front. Dawn, if you want to take a seat as well, we'll kind of facilitate things this way and kind of start the next piece of it, the meet the candidates night.
This water, if anybody, one of you wanted, it's unopened and untouched.
Any seat.
So while everybody gets settled in, we are, as I mentioned to you all, previously rather, in addition to the budget vote on Tuesday, May 16th, we will be voting for one Board of Education member. We have 3 candidates that are vying for the one open seat. Brandon Beckinghausen, Scott Johnson, and Dawn L. Scott Iverson. Again, 3 candidates running for one open seat. The top vote getter will be elected to a 5-year term expiring on June 30th of 2028. So traditionally, what we've done as part of this process will allow each of the potential candidates or each of the candidates rather, potential board members to give about a 3 to 5 minute statement about themselves, about why they're running for the board. So we'll start and do that. And then when the final candidate is done, we'll kind of open it up to potential questions from the audience. If audience members do have questions from of one of the board members, we will ask you to come up to the podium, and then we'll provide an opportunity for all 3 of the candidates to answer your questions. Okay, so I guess with that, we'll start. I'm just looking here. We'll start with Mr. Johnson, your statement, please, and then we'll just kind of go down the line.
Okay. Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Scott Johnson. I've been representing you and our community on the Board of Education for 17 years. Tonight, I'm here before you seeking another 5-year term. During my time on the board, we have faced many challenges. During the 2009-2010 school year, New York State implemented the gap elimination adjustment as part of their Deficit Reduction Act. Basically, they eliminated the state deficit by creating mid-year gaps in all school district budgets. While every school district had to make some significant cuts, Sweet Home was one of the first districts to get back to normal. I'm sure everyone remembers the years of COVID-19. Since we had already moved to one-to-one computing, we were able to fairly quickly move to remote learning. More importantly, using federal aid, we were able to hire several elementary teachers. These moves allowed us to decrease class sizes and provide the proper spacing as required by New York State. As a result, our elementary students were among the first to return to the classroom in Western New York. Another big piece of this role, working on the Board of Education, is working with the State Education Department and the state legislature to adjust policy and regulations, along with requesting appropriate funding in the state budget. To that end, I've been a member of the Erie County Association of School Boards legislative team for most of my time on the board, and I have co-chaired the team for the last 10 years. The team spends a lot of time meeting with our elected officials, both at their home offices and in Albany, to discuss issues. Before I joined the board, a group called the Campaign for Fiscal Equity was formed and filed lawsuits against New York State to get the proper funding for free and appropriate public education. Even though New York State lost the lawsuits more than a decade ago, there always seemed to be a reason not to fully fund schools. School board members across the state, including numbers from Western New York, have been fighting for years to get fully funded. And this year, it finally happened. The State Education Department has long had regulations on how many years students could participate in athletics. When schools began participating in unified sports, we found those regulations affected our athletes who were special education students. They were going to be forced out of their sport, even though they had a few years left in school. Again, this issue was tackled by many board members. I started an online petition to the Commissioner of Education and several legislators. We asked that students be allowed to continue playing until they completed high school, which is typically at age 21. In addition, I wrote letters to those same people and encouraged others to do the same. That change was granted and our athletes continued to play. They're actually down the hall playing now. Meeting with elected representatives is a year-round job. It must be done in a bipartisan way to make sure we get support from everyone. We have a meeting coming up this Thursday with Senator Gallivan to discuss a few current issues. Although he doesn't represent Sweet Home, we work to get the entire Western New York delegation together as much as possible. Finally, the most important part of this job is the students we are serving. Before COVID, I made it a point to spend a full day in every school almost every year. This allowed me to talk directly with teachers, aides, administrators, and the students. Visiting our students is the most rewarding part of this role. I made a few visits this year and plan to start back with regular visits again in the fall. Everything we do requires a close and good working relationship with my fellow board members and district administrators. Good communications are also key. In closing, this speech only touches on the many things that effective school board members must do. We must take mandatory training, plus we frequently take additional training when offered. Next week, I'll be attending a 3-hour session on legal issues within special education. I love this work and want to continue making a difference for our Sweet Home community. I humbly request your vote on Election Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Beckinghausen, if you'd like to do your statement, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to speak with all of you tonight about such an important topic, our children. My name is Brandon Beckinghausen, and I am running to be your next school board representative. I am a long-term resident of the town of Amherst, and I'm proud to call Sweet Home my home district. From a young age, I learned the importance of community service through the process of becoming an Eagle Scout. I have since continued that community focus with fundraisers and services to other organizations such as Western New York Heroes. I would like to continue to grow my community involvement by serving on this Sweet Home School Board. As for my career, I have spent my entire adult life working in the financial services industry, and I currently work at a local credit union. I believe my background in financial services will help serve the community and the school board well. As one of your board members, I will work to address the following. First, I will focus on increasing transparency between parents, teachers, and school leadership. I have heard from parents about some problems with transparency and will work to listen to everyone involved in school issues. I will make sure everything is available to the public. I want to make this clear. This is not an attack on our teachers. In fact, I admire our teachers. I have multiple family members who teach in other districts. I've been told by a few parents that we have some of the best teachers in the Sweet Home School District. Sometimes being a teacher can be a thankless job. We need to continue to empower our teachers with new ways and more effective ways to communicate with parents and their students. Additionally, a primary focus needs to be the mental health of our students. Too often we turn on news only to hear of a horrific event that happened. Oftentimes we learn that in the aftermath, there were multiple warning signs that were either ignored or proper resources were unavailable. My focus will be to ensure that the appropriate resources are available to all our teachers, administration, family, and administration. Lastly, I want to focus to make sure student activities such as sports, music, art, and other extracurricular activities take a priority over non-essential spending. The purpose of the school is to develop our children into healthy and productive citizens for this community and country. Our children should not suffer from the lack of funding and lack of facilities because of some agenda this board or school administration believe we should focus on. I look forward to working with this current board and all of the amazing parents and teachers throughout the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beckinghausen. Mrs. Scott Iverson, if you would.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So I am not going to go into a lot of detail as my two candidates next to me did. But I want to speak a little bit about myself and my love affair with Sweet Home High School and Sweet Home District. So first of all, my name is Dawn Scott Iverson, and I know most of the people in the room. I have been in the district for over 50 years. I went to Sweet Home myself. I graduated in 1987. My beautiful mother is sitting across from me. She graduated in 1961, the second graduating class from Sweet Home. And our house used to be the Tim Horton across the street. So I talk about that quite often. So I know the district. I've been in the district for a long time. I have roots that are embedded here. I married my husband, Stevie Iverson, about 25 years ago, and we purchased a home in the Willow Ridge School District. And we have our children that have also attended, Michael and Stephen. They both graduated from Sweet Home, along with my grandchildren that are there now, 4th generation. I have a middle schooler, Kennedy, and my second oldest grandchild will be attending Willow Ridge in the fall. So we have roots here. I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent. I know how the district is supposed to be. I fell in love with Sweet Home when I was at Sweet Home. I had a whole conversation yesterday with someone that actually went here with me. And we just talked about how the district was when we went here. We talked about how we felt when we got to school on Monday morning. We talked about how we have lifelong friends now in the district. All of that needs to come back. So that's part of, the reason that I am trying to get onto the board, and I want to be part of the board. I am an accomplished insurance agent. I have knowledge of 25 years in the insurance industry. Recently, I decided that I wanted to get into the education realm, and I kind of dipped my toe in and came into Sweet Home. And I was a substitute teacher here at Sweet Home High School. It was a wonderful experience. It gave me the opportunity to get to know the kids, get to know the teachers, and get to know the parents. I am a parent, so of course I was familiar with what some of the parents were feeling. And I got to know what the temperature was within the school. And it has changed. There has been a lot of things that have changed, many for good. And then some things I would like to see go back to what it was when I was here, so that we can have that love affair again. I want the children to have that same feeling that I had when I went to school here at Sweet Home. As we talked earlier, as you've been talking earlier about the buses, I wanted to talk about the buses because I think it's important to bring back the after-school buses for the 4 o'clock and the 6 o'clock. I think it's very important because the students in our district cannot get to the after-school programs. They can't get into sports. So in turn, they don't know each other. They don't really know each other. They come in on Monday morning, and when you're in the corridor, it's quiet. When I came into Sweet Home on Monday morning, it was craziness because everybody was so excited to get back in and to talk to each other and to, we were on teams with everyone. We were on clubs with everyone. We got to know everyone. We had a love affair with Sweet Home. We need to bring that back. And I do believe that that will help us. Another is that we are second to none in education. We're a destination school district. And we want those people that are coming to our school district because of our English second language, because that's second to none. We want them to build their roots right here too. We want them to plant their roots. We want them to buy homes. We want them to build homes. And that's going to help with the tax base, and it's going to help with the budget. So those are some of the things that I'm interested in helping when I'm on the board. I want to be that sounding board for the parents. I want to be the sounding board for the students. I want to be the sounding board for the community. I'm here. I've been here. I know what it's like. I know what it feels like. I know there were some questions today, and people are, kind of a little bit up in arms about the budget, and they don't know what to think. I understand that. I've been here. I know that. I trust Sweet Home. I trust everything that we've seen today. So I want to leave you really quickly. I wanted to say very quickly that I wanted you to think about a pond in a very calm body of water and think about a rock being thrown into that water. Well, that's change because it creates ripples, correct? I'm the rock that's going to be thrown into the water and create change. It's going to be good change. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Iverson. And just a nice round of applause for everybody. At this point in time, what we would do is we would open it up to questions from our audience. Again, if you have questions, if you would just come up to the podium, introduce yourselves to the candidates, and then we'll go from there. Are there any questions? If you could come up to the podium.
Do I have to talk in here? Or
You have to talk
do I have
into
to tell them my name or anything?
Yep, if you could just say
Okay.
your name right into the microphone.
Okay, Kim Perini. Do I have to tell
Yep.
them my address?
No, you're good. And then if you can. just
Okay,
ask the question.
some of these questions might be the same of what but I just want to hear it again. Okay. Do I just address them?
If you just ask the question, then we'll have them answer.
Okay.
Each of them will answer the question.
Okay, why did you choose to run for the open board position this year? And is there a specific issue or issues that motivates you to serve or continue to serve on the school board?
So Mrs. Scott Iverson, if you would start with that. that would be
Okay,
great.
so the reason that I chose is again, because I was a substitute teacher and I got to see more of what the temperature is within the school district. I got to hear the teachers, I got to talk with the students, I got to be out in the hallways, I was in the special education classes. I really got to see what goes on within the school district. And I think that there is change that's needed. So I wanted to come onto the board.
Same question, Mr. Beckinghausen.
I'm running for a simple fact that I want to get back to the community. Again, like I said earlier, I've watched the news. There's a lot of stuff going on in our schools. And I want to make sure that I help our children become productive adults in life. I don't have children myself yet, but someday I do want to have kids of my own. And I want to make sure when I do have that opportunity that I'm able to bring my children to a school that is successful and strong, as Sweet Home has always been.
Mr. Johnson, same question.
Okay, obviously I'm slightly different, having been here 17 years already, but going back when I first came to the board, I was on what was called the CDEP team, working for the school district here as a volunteer because I was as a parent representative. And back at that time, I had teachers and administrators encouraging me to run for the board because I thought I could make a difference. The reason I'm still here is when I went through school long ago and far away, I didn't have a good school experience. So I came out and I said, I want to be part of a team that can make my school experience better for me and for our students than the one that I had way back when. And I think my kids, they graduated 2012 and 2015. I think they had a better school experience. I think we're making a difference and I think we can continue to make a difference.
You have other questions?
Yeah, I just have a question for you, Paul.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
because I'm gonna ask, can I make a comment after I answer my questions?
Sure,
Or
that's
otherwise,
fine.
I'm gonna make it a question.
Well, let's make it
instead.
a question so everybody can
Okay,
answer.
okay. My second question is, how important is public transparency to you? And if elected or reelected, what are ways you can improve on this within the Sweet Home School District?
Mr. Beckinghausen, let's start with you this time.
I think transparency is paramount. It's not only very important, but it's legally mandatory. I think that transparency needs to be a primary focus of the school board and any public official. I have read through some of the audit reports and I see the word transparency come up a couple times in there, and that to me is a little bit of an alarm. As a person that's worked in the financial industry, I feel like that I can help bring some experience to the board to help with that. I've gone through audits and exams working for a credit union, so I hope to be able to help add to transparency to this board.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
I also believe that transparency is very important for us, and I think the school district already does a good job of it. What needs to be seen, I mean, and the same auditors reports you mentioned, they mentioned that if you look around to any other school district in Western New York that had to complete it, they wrote it on all of them. They didn't actually look into it, in my opinion. It's my opinion, to see what they're doing. Like our budget, they said our budget process is not transparency. We've had several meetings, public meetings here, just like was asked by the lady in the back, where that budget was explained. Opportunity was given for questions. It was also out on the website, just like this is tonight. And we don't get people show up at these events. We also have both an internal and an external auditor that come to us and do audits for us each year. Again, they come and make presentations at the board meetings. There's very seldom, if ever, anybody here to ask questions about it. Those things are all published in our website, on our website for the board meetings, so everybody can see all that information that's in there. Lastly, when we added Dr. Genestri as our superintendent almost 2 years ago now, one of the reasons we brought him in was for his communication skills to help us increase what we're already doing.
Mrs. Scott Iverson?
I like to be in the know. So yes, I want to know what's going on. And as a parent, I want transparency. I want to know exactly what's going on. I don't think there should be any secrets. And it comes back to morals, ethics. Okay.
So I'm just making this question up because I needed to make a question instead of a comment. So I just want to say thank you all for mentioning special education and that. And I'll just open the floor for you to talk if you want, I want to explain how you want to improve it, or because it's really second to none. I have a couple of kids that do research services. That's why I said thank you.
Wanted to address special education at all.
I said it's second to none. Well, he said I had to have a question, so that's why I was just gonna thank you. But
All right, we can go with that. I
okay,
mean, that's
okay,
fine.
thank you.
You're good. Any other questions, Musab?
Hi, my name is Musab Abrar. So I have one question for each of you. It's not really like 3 questions for the whole thing. Is that allowed?
In the interest of fairness, we're gonna
Okay.
ask. everybody
Okay.
to answer the question.
All right, so you guys all have like varying levels of experience in the field of being a board member and being on committees. Are there, I know you guys mentioned it in your statements, but are there any new pressing matters that haven't been addressed that you're specifically working on, or are there more continuing issues?
Mr. Johnson, I'll let you go first on that one.
In my mind, I think just about everything that we've got is a continuing issue. And you heard it as part of the budget presentation here, and Mrs. Scott Iverson also addressed it, busing, to be able to get kids in here to after-school programs. We have been fighting like crazy to hire bus drivers. And did you say 57 we're at now? Because I see we're voting on 3 more retire, and that's what concerns me.
For less than a half.
We can't get bus drivers. One of the other things we're voting on tonight is a outside contract to take one student to a different school the charter school that they're attending. And that bus alone will cost us $46,000 a year to send one kid to a charter school. We're required by law to do it. We still have to pay for it. If we had our own bus drivers, there'd be more than one kid on a bus going to more than one place. So that's one of our biggest challenges right now. It's not our only challenge by any stretch of the imagination, though. And as far as new ones, I don't have any new one on the horizon. I just think there's plenty of things we need to keep working on.
Mrs. Scott Iverson.
Yes, so I think what comes to mind for me, first of all, would be there. I know that there is always something going on, and there's always something, that is pressing that we need to talk about. And I know that there were some issues just today in the high school at the end of the day that, there was fighting. We have to address that. We have to, figure out a way to get everyone to be on one page and get everyone to be united and not divided. So that is something that I would hope that we would talk about and put at the top of our agenda.
Beckinghausen.
I agree with both candidates. I think it's an ongoing battle, essentially, that there's always things coming up. It probably feels like you finish one task and the next thing comes up. But one thing that I see that there might be a lack of on the school board is there isn't anyone with a definitive financial background, someone who would understand everything that goes into making a budget and running an organization as large as the Sweet Home School District.
Thank you.
And just one more question. So as a student myself, I understand how important mental health is in both the student's life and their education that they receive from the school district. So if elected as a board official, what are some of the first steps you guys would take towards improving mental health resources? And how would you use the resources that you would have as an official to further that process?
Mrs. Scott Iverson.
Okay, so I think about Dr. Lucci, first of all. She's fantastic, and I think that is definitely the main resource that you have here at the school right now. I do think the teachers should receive additional training on mental health. That's not just something that you can pull out of your pocket. It is something that you need to train on and understand deeply.
Mr. Beckinghausen.
So I think I agree what Don said. I think the teachers, staff, anyone who works for the school district needs additional training. I think that might also include additional staff that can help focus on students' mental health and possibly after school programs, resources to the community and the parents that they can reach out to the school and get assistance if they're struggling and they don't have anyone to reach out to. I think the school needs to be a resource for the community in this regard.
Mr. Johnson.
Agree with both of my colleagues on the need for more training for our staff, all of them. I think it's just a matter of more understanding what you are and being able to maybe head off some issues as you go along. Also looking back over our budgets the last couple of years, we have been hiring more mental health workers in various positions, social workers, psychology was actually an announcement for psychologists today that went out. I know that. So we've been adding more to the staff, and I think there's still room to add more people into that group. There's a couple other things. Our Family Support Center does some wonderful work, right over here, but I don't think it's as well advertised as so that everybody knows that it's available to themselves. And the most important one from my perspective at this point is for the last handful of years, we've been working with the town of Amherst and some community members on the Northwest Amherst Community Center, which will be opening up in September. And it's up here in the north end of the district. And that's going to provide a lot of services to us. It's going to be open to all of our members, the members of the community. And it's not in addition to the services, it's going to have some of the after-school programs we're looking at. It's going to be some babysitting. It's not even just going to be for school students. It'll also be for any of the citizens of Amherst too. So I think that's going to provide some great services. And it's something we need to make sure that we're helping as much as possible.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Come on up.
Hello, my name is Tracy Rudzinski. I am a resident of Sweet Home, have been since 1971. I'm also a employee here. I'm a substitute teacher. I have substitute in all 3 levels of education this year so far. I have heard a lot today about administration, about financials, about programs, but what I have not heard is about the socialization of the Sweet Home school, Sweet Home students. How, as a board member, would you affect that?
I think you'd have to start with the teachers and the parents again. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. You're on a roll. Go right ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump ahead. But I think the teachers and the parents and collectively, we have to, come together to be able to work on that for the socialization of the students.
Brandon, sorry.
Socialization is a very important part of growing up, maturing as a young adult. It's come to my attention recently that one of the elementary schools actually has a problem with allowing the children to even eat in the cafeteria. In my opinion, it is, especially at an elementary age, a very precious moment for our children to be learning social skills and developmental skills in the cafeteria with their friends, other students of their age. I think that's something that needs to be focused on in improving and allowing our students to be able to socialize and use our facilities as was intended by when the building was built.
Mr. Johnson.
I think there's a lot of methods to attack this, unfortunately, and I agree that there is some more need for it. Part of it comes right back to home life before they get here. We have way too many people that spend way too much time doing this. I don't have the answer. I wish I did. That's part of our issue. The schools have a number of great events going on, and we need to be able to encourage more people to get to them. As I mentioned earlier, there's a unified basketball game going down the hall right now. When I left there was 60 or 70 people there. To me, that's the type of thing we should have a couple hundred people out watching those games and cheering on our students that are involved with that support. There are all kinds of things like that. We just need to be able to get more people to encourage people to get out and attend these events. And I don't know, I'm sure I know there's other things we need to do, but I think just encouraging people to come to our events that go on in the school would make a good head start on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Mr. Rabenel, looks like you have a question. Welcome. Thanks.
I have 2 questions, if I could. This probably piggybacks the socialization that you had talked about just a little bit ago. What is your personal opinion about elementary building students eating their lunch in the classroom versus the cafeteria?
Dawn, if you want to start.
Dawn, thank you.
My personal opinion, well, okay, I went to Willow Ridge as a student, and when I went to Willow Ridge, the population was quite high in the district. So I wasn't even able to go to kindergarten in the building. They had oh my gosh, I can't, like trailers on the side of the building. And we went to school in those trailers until you got into first grade. And I believe that made all the room for us to be able to eat in the lunchroom. So I think that they should be able to eat together. I think socialization is important. I think that they need that time to wind down while they've been in class all day. And I do think that there's going to be an easy fix. We just have to sit down and put our minds to it and figure out how to get those kids back in the cafeteria.
Okay.
Mr. Beckinghausen.
So I would kind of address that. So like she said, I think that is the most important time, or one of the most important times for our young children to start building on their socialization. After COVID or during COVID, we lost a lot of that time. And I don't think we can afford to lose any more of it. These kids need to be in a lunch setting together. And I think that we need to focus on making sure the budget accounts for that accordingly. If we have spending or extra money for other programs, other costs, we should be able to use that money to make sure that the students are able to use that facility correctly, be it if we don't have enough space because they're being used by other programs, finding a way to make room for those programs so we're not cutting anything for the students, but making sure that the students have their lunchroom.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
I think like most people, I would like to see the kids back in the cafeteria. It's not quite as clean and simple as that, though. As I mentioned earlier on, and as Mr. Feldman mentioned during his budget presentation, we hired a number of teachers during with the federal money during the COVID timeframe. The reason we did that was we could decrease class sizes down to 12, 13 kids so that we would be able to meet the spacing requirements and so on, to be able to keep getting our kids back into school earlier, which we did. At that same time, all those teachers are required, as Mr. Feldman mentioned, we are required to keep all those teachers. We can't lay them off. It wouldn't be the right thing to do anyways. So right now, we are using literally every space in our elementary schools for classroom teachers is where we're at. And we've all moved some other people into the cafeterias. There are no empty spaces. That's our big problem. Our population has been growing in each of our elementary schools, which is awesome. I mean, that's a great thing. We've talked about it. There's a committee, which I believe Mr. Genestri is talking about tonight, at least they're meeting the Built and Use Committee for some of their suggestions, but it's not quite as easy as it might seem. And lastly, I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding about it. When the kids go to the cafeteria to eat lunch, they still eat with their same classroom group. They don't spread around with other people. They just don't get to sit where they want to. They still eat with their classroom group to be able to move kids efficiently in and out of the cafeteria.
Okay, I think the part of that question is a priority. What is the priority in your thinking about kids eating together in a cafeteria or kids sitting in a classroom that they've been sitting all day and not having a chance to really have another conversation other than classroom activities? But anyways, let me ask my second question. And you could add on to that if you'd like, that first question in the response to this one. This one has more to do with parents. And what do you believe parents should know what their children are being taught and have a say? The parents have a say in those programs, including books used. So that's a pretty broad question there, but I appreciate your answer.
Start with you.
So I think it's paramount for our parents to know what is going on in the classroom, have a say in what's going on in the classroom. The school and the district does not become the parents during the time that the student is with the district. The parent, the school district is acting in place of the school, the parents. So I do think that the parent needs to have be a pinnacle focus on what is, what the curriculum is, and allowing them to make sure, have transparency on what is going on in the classroom.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Our parents have a method of being able to do that. They can communicate with their teachers right now through the various programs, and they should be communicating with them and watching what their kids are learning. And they can ask the questions of the teachers on a regular basis as to what they're doing. I think if they followed through on that, and they would have a much better understanding of what goes on in the classrooms. As far as choosing the books, there's a state law generates a process of how we choose what books go in a classroom. And right now, we don't buy very many books anyways. Just about everything is done with the computer. So that's sort of a moot point.
Mrs. Scott Iverson.
I believe that the students, the teachers, and the parents should collaborate with each other. And I do believe that everyone should have a say.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Admiral.
thank you.
Any other questions? Mrs. Reagan Clemens, come on up. All right.
I think I'll piggyback on Dirk's comment. So as the building is filled with teachers who have advanced degrees in education and administrators who have advanced degrees in those things, similar, like when I go to the dentist or my kids go to the dentist, I don't then tell the dentist how to treat my child's teeth because I don't have the background. It doesn't mean that I don't have a vested interest in my child and their best interest. And I want to have some, want to know what's happening and consent to things, but I'm certainly not going to dictate or, insist on that I know better than the dentist. So there is an issue in a small group of people in the world that, that parents should have an equal say with teachers as far as what their kids are learning and how they're learning, even though like, I don't know how to teach a child how to read. I read with my kids, but I don't know how that is broken down because I don't have the training. Where do you guys fit as far as that balance of like respecting the really advanced degrees that are required to do that job properly versus parents who love their kids and want nothing but the best for them?
Mr. Johnson, we'll start with you.
Okay. I agree with you. We have professionals, they make a good living. They've spent a long time learning their craft, especially at our administrative level. They are the ones that propose the decisions or any of the work to the school board before anything might be changed. They explain to us what and why, because obviously, and none of us are also education professionals. We all each have our own backgrounds that we bring forward to the table. I'm sorry, except for Peter back there. I apologize, Peter, because Peter is a teacher. I apologize for that. And yeah, and Mr. Liable is also a financial guy too, so I do apologize. We've got those, but anyways, that's all those different backgrounds just gives us the ability to ask the right questions of them as we help move forward with programs. I strongly believe that those are the people that need to decide what we're doing, but it has to be based on good, sound research. It can't be just, we're going to willy-nilly pick a new program and a new way of teaching every week. The things have to be based on solid research, and then we move forward from there as to what we want to see is going to work. Does that mean parents can't have input? No, they can. They can come to the board meeting. They can elect new board members if that's what they choose to do and express their concerns about that stuff, or they can go directly to the school principals and work their way up the administration if they've got concerns. But the highly paid professionals, those are the ones that should be making those decisions.
Scott Iverson.
I do agree with that. I agree that people go for a long time to get those education, and they want to educate our students in a way that has been set forth. But I think that the parents should still have a voice, and they should be able to tell or collaborate with the teacher and with the school. And maybe it's the right setting to come to one of the board meetings to do that.
Mr. Beckinghausen.
So I do agree with both candidates. I, better than most people, understand that the teachers did go through all that training. I have family members that are teachers. My sister herself just finished school 2 years ago and got her master's degree and is now teaching in the Williamsville School District. So I do understand that these teachers put everything they have and more into these students. And the problem that I see is sometimes the parents aren't being listened to. And that those.
What makes you say
those-
that, may I ask?
So parents need to have a voice in how their children are being taught, not necessarily what 1 + 1 is, but there are times, and I'm not saying it's happening here, but I do see that there is, and I've heard from parents across Erie County that there is curriculum that is being pushed that does not fall in line with parent values.
For
certain parent
example?
Values.
For example,
So, for example, some parents have very religious views, for example, and things are being taught against those values that they might hold. So a parent should have that right and ability to say, there needs to be a spot where, hey, I don't want my kids exposed to certain things. I'm not saying that things should be erased from curriculum, but there is a point where parents should have some say.
can I just have one more question?
Sure.
There was I don't remember who said it, but something about like, there was non-essential funding in the budget. So that got me thinking to spread it to everyone. Is there something that you wish you could put in the budget? And is there something you wish that you could unfund from the budget? Like if you had your way, is there something you'd like to fund that maybe would be a dream, or something that you really would like to unfund because you feel that money could be used in a better way?
Mrs. Iverson.
I go back to, again, with the school buses and getting bus drivers, and we need our sports teams to come back. We were number one. We were number one. We were number one when I was here. We were number one when my children were here. We need to bring that back. We need to put some money into those extracurricular activities. It's not, school is school, but it's very important for the students to get together and do those other things as well.
Anything that you would unfund?
Anything that I would unfund? Not that I can think of right now.
Beckinghausen?
So my primary focus is making sure that the students have all the funding they need to be able to do any sport, art, music, extracurriculars that they wish to do. I was fortunate enough to have parents that were able to provide all the different things I could do. Eagle Scout, I swam, baseball. I did a lot of different sports growing up, and not every kid has that opportunity. So I think if I was going to fund anything further, it would be all of the different extracurriculars, sports, music, arts, everything that goes towards the children's ability to round themselves as young adults.
Anything that you would unfund?
I can't think of anything at the moment.
Mr. Johnson?
It's a tough one. I mean, I'd have nothing that I would unfund because Mr. Feldman would have heard about it sometime in the last 5 months, as would my counterparts on the board. I think our budget actually covers all that stuff that the kids need right now. We've done a good, decent job on that. The one thing I would like to fund, and I don't know how I'm going to do it, is an immediate increase in the size of our classroom buildings and in our buildings. I mean, we've gone this year with the board and met at each one of the schools. And I asked at least a couple of them before we went through, what would be your immediate wish? And when we were at Maplemere, which is our biggest one right now for being squeezed, they do have the classes you were talking about out back of the school, and they call them learning cottages. I heard them saying it over there, they had a fancier name for the trailer. But anyways, I said, other than us dropping 2 more classrooms at the end of your building, what would you like immediately? And they said 6 classrooms, not 2. So that's the biggest thing. I just wish, and we are going to come to you ask for funding, whether it's me or the rest of the board, whoever it is. In a couple more years, we're going to ask you for more funding and probably to add some space to some of our schools. That's discussion has already started. That would be, I would be.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes, sir. If you could come up to the podium.
Yeah, I had a few questions in mind. First off, the school has been making continuing efforts to seek to be more inclusive of the diverse student body and meet the differing needs of educational needs of students. So I was wondering, what would you seek to do as a board member to help further those efforts of inclusivity and meeting the differing educational needs of students?
Mr. Johnson, let's start with you this time.
We're already doing, we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee going on right now. Which I'm a member of it, as some others, as Mr. Ravenel also was a member of that committee. And on top of that, we have 5 individual subcommittees doing different studies and moving them forward. Some of them are going to be presented in the next month or 2 for changes. There's a number of ongoing things, and every one of them, we've reached out to the community and gotten community leaders. We have students on committees. We've gotten a lot of different people already involved in this. So it's not just administration and teachers and the board. And that's already ongoing. It's been ongoing for more than a year. If anybody wants to read about it, it's on our website. You can find the DEI in the opening page and get a lot more information.
Mrs. Scott Iverson.
Yes, I think that it would be important to have the students really get out and teach us, because we can all learn, no matter how old we are, about their backgrounds. So we should have a week for, the different backgrounds that they have. And I know we're very diverse. We speak, I think, 40+ languages here. So I think it would be really important if they could get together and start teaching each other about their backgrounds and where they come from.
Mr. Beckinghausen.
I wholeheartedly agree with what Dawn just said. I think having everyone learn about all the diverse backgrounds. I remember as a kid, one of the things we did was even doing cultural stuff. I think making sure that everyone understands everyone has a different background, different history. They come from a different place. They might have different experiences in life than you might have. So making sure that all our students are learning all the different shades and colors that the world has and how wonderful they are.
Yes, and another question was on the matter of informational literacy, which is an important skill in modern times for being able to learn how to acquire and evaluate and make use of information. So I was wondering, what would you seek to do in order to help further advance the teaching of information literacy in our schools?
Mrs. Iverson.
Literacy at Sweet Home is really second to none. So I'm sure we can always improve, but right now, again, they're sending people to our district because of our, literacy year. So we're getting, students sent to us because of where we stand.
Mr. Beckinghausen.
So that is something that I would, as we were talking about earlier, teachers, the administration have that background that we must lean on some of that. Making sure that our students have adequate scores in exams. And like I said, if they need additional help, making sure the funding is there to provide that to the students.
And Mr. Johnson.
I agree with Mrs. Iverson. She said it very well. How about if I leave it right there?
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other questions from the audience? Oh, sure, come on up.
Hello, my name is Diane Scott. As Dawn told you, I am her mother. I'm very proud of her. I'm not going to ask you any questions. I just want to leave you with a couple words, okay? Respect. Respect. Compassion. Teamwork. And listen, truly listen. I don't know what the results are going to be of this election. Of course, I'm biased, but remember those words: respect, compassion, teamwork, and listen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with no other questions, how about a round of applause for our candidates? They did a nice job. Just as a point of information, again, voting on both the school district budget and the Board of Education election will take place in this room on Tuesday, May the 16th from 7 to 9 p.m. And if you're not in district on the date for travel or work, you can call the district office and we can get you an absentee ballot. So good luck to our candidates. I think at this time, the board can take their seats and we'll go about our business.
I don't know if anyone has told either of you, typically stand outside. It's up to you. I mean, you don't have to, but 100 feet away from the door, you have to be voting, as you know, that routine. Yeah, on May 16th, the most of the time. So to some extent. Or rain. Yeah, or rain, yeah, it could be. That's typically the. And further up, as long as you're beyond that 100 feet. Yeah. So. Yeah, no, the American office.
You know, can you try and share again? Good luck.
Sorry, Peter, I'm looking at you. It's the worst part.
Oh. Just hit one button.
Look at
All
us.
right.
We're well.
That's never happened before when I hit one button.
Okay, so that, we have to,
The meeting.
didn't we have to adjourn? Is that
We
part
have
of
to
it?
adjourn and then we go to the study.
Yes. Could I have a motion to adjourn the special session?
So moved.
Any conversation?
Second.
Second, any conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
He just went to the bathroom.
Oh. Next, that takes us to the approval of the agenda, which we'll be doing next week. Any comments, concerns? That takes us to the minutes of the previous meeting. Any questions, comments, concerns? Next is communications. Has anyone received communication? No, I'm thinking. Anything?
I got an invite.
Oh, we got an invite from Glendale. Was it Glendale?
Glendale's
Glendale.
Learning Day, and didn't we get
Yes.
something from Harris Beach for dinner? Or
There's a-
Erie County
Erie County
Association of
Association
Board
of
dinner?
School
Those
Boards,
are the
their
only
end of
ones that I
year
got.
dinner, I think.
Harris Beach is doing training next
Training,
Tuesday.
that's right. Okay.
Okay. All right, that takes us to our first open session. As per board policy 1512, we hold 2 open sessions at each meeting. The first session is limited to comments on agenda items for tonight's meeting. The board welcomes attendance and participation by district residents, people having business within the boundaries of the school district, and people who do business with the Board of Education. Speakers must be at least 16 years of age, and they are limited to 3 minutes. Please preface your comments with your name, address, and group affiliation if appropriate. Non-district residents must include the name of their business or how they do business with the Board of Education. All speakers in this open session must state which agenda item they are speaking on. Any takers? Okay, why don't you come up here, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Can I ask you about that?
About,
That was in the meeting already?
sure. Go ahead, Tanya. And we have a 3-minute. It's more of an agenda.
It's gotta be.
Yeah, this is only supposed to be
Yeah,
on
is
current
this-
agenda items.
Well, is this?
It's not the calendar. It's not the calendar.
Oh, I thought you
It
were
was
talking
previous.
calendar.
He thought it was, but I need to see the calendar before I ask.
Okay, then that's going to take us to our second session.
Yeah,
So-
so this is from the first prior session. I heard something and I didn't ask a question after.
About the budget?
Yes.
About the
Can I-
budget.
This isn't questions.
Yeah.
Some of these statements.
We have to make, we will have to, the question about the calendar has to wait until the second open session.
Okay.
She has questions about,
I don't have a question about the budget. I just want to know where something is located on the budget or on the website.
is that a private letter you can send to Mr. Genestria or
It's
Mr.?
something that Dirk mentioned already. So
Man, I can answer. Is there a question about where on the website? What?
Can I just write it down for you?
I don't want to.
You always send an email.
Send you an email, yeah.
Supposed to be
How
question
about
and
we,
answers.
how about Kim?
Okay.
Because we can't do questions answered right now. Why don't you send Mr. Feldman a question about that and he'll get right back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Question I'm gonna ask. That's appropriate to send an email.
Yep.
Thanks, Kim. All right, anybody else? All right, next is unfinished business and we have none. That takes us to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mrs. Jason. We wanted to start tonight with a presentation by Mrs. Bayless on our calendar,
Yes, thank you.
the proposed calendar.
Thank you, Dr. Genestri. And thank you to all of you for being here this evening. I have the pleasure of revealing the highly anticipated reveal of the 2023-24 calendar recommendation. So for those who are viewing this evening, we put together, when we do the calendar every year, the process is to convene a committee of stakeholder groups to come together and take a look at the calendar based on the parameters that are set for us and where we have some discretion. So I'd like to thank those who served on our calendar committee this year. We had members from our parent group, from all of our PTAs, from our teachers union, our service employees union, our administrative union, and of course, district office. So thank you to those who have served. I won't read through all of the names, but thank you for your service. The first thing that we take a look at when we build a calendar for the school year, there's a number of items. One is the state education department sets forth some regulations that we take a look at and make sure our calendar meets those regulations. We take a look at the New York State assessments and regents exam schedule, all legal holidays, contractual language, stakeholder interests, the BOCES calendar, and emergency closure considerations. So I'm going to take each one of those in a little more detail. So the first one is the New York State Education Department puts forth regulations for building the calendar. And under New York State education law, we must be in session for at least 180 days to maximize our foundation aid allocations. We also look at the commissioner regulations related to annual aggregate minimum hours. So we do have to make sure that from grades K-6, that we have at least 900 hours of instruction, and from grades 7-12, 990 hours of instruction. It does permit half days or shortened days of student attendance, which also count towards those aggregate hours. The other piece that we take a look at in terms of what aggregate hours means, those are any days that we are in session. It does include regents exam days and state assessment dates. It also includes up to 4 superintendent's conference days. And there are some parameters of when superintendent's conference days can occur, which include before the first day of instruction, on the last day of instruction. Parent-teacher conference days can be counted as superintendent's conference days. And we can also hold conference days at the end of August, which would be subject to our collective bargaining agreement. And of course, we would not hold them on a legal holiday or a Saturday. Take a look at the next year's regents exam and assessment schedules. We do have the exam dates for next year for January and June, and also the New York State assessments for grades 3 through 8 in ELA and math, as well as the computer-based testing window. So we'll take those into account when we build our calendar. The next thing we take a look at when building the calendar are all of our legal holidays. So on the screen before you are all of the legal holidays that occur during the school year. The only edit we've made to our calendar this year is in the past, we've referred to the October Day, Columbus Day, as strictly Columbus Day. And this year we are adding the Indigenous Peoples Day. We're making that recommendation to the board to add that language on the school district calendar. This was a conversation that was had in our DEI committee and our subcommittee groups. There were some conversations about keeping it strictly Columbus Day or honoring, which is the state or the federal holiday, as well as adding the language for Indigenous Peoples Day, which is by state and federal proclamation. And obviously the remaining holidays are the annual holidays that have been traditionally held, including more recently the Juneteenth holiday. We also take a look at the parameters set forth by the contracts, our collective bargaining agreements. So under our teacher's contract, we do work 186 days. The first day being after Labor Day and the last day allowing for the day after Regents Rating Day. We do have 2 half days near the end of the last or the first 2 trimesters for report cards and 2 half days for elementary student attendance at the end of the school year. The calendar also does provide for parent-teacher conference days, which include the elementary, a full day and 1 extended day, and at the middle school and the high school, an extended day. Finally, we take into account some stakeholder considerations, which include obviously our first and foremost goal is to maximize the instructional days and hours for our students. We also like to align with the Erie One BOCES calendar. Many of our students, of course, take coursework with Erie One, whether it's through the special education program or through the career and technical education program. So it's important to align our calendar with the BOCES calendar to optimize instructional time in both settings. We like to make sure we build in time for emergency closure days and to minimize the days of half days of student attendance at the elementary level to help our parents and families. We of course, continue to want to honor the need for evening hours for parent-teacher conferences at all levels. We've been continuing the elementary trimester calendar, which has been very successful for the elementary program, and to provide the elementary teachers with those half days to prepare for their report cards prior to those conference days. And so with all those considerations that we take into account and with input from our stakeholder groups at the calendar committee, we reveal our calendar here. We are proposing that our calendar, and just like some note too, this every year when we build a calendar, sometimes the calendar contracts or expands based on when Labor Day falls and when the rating day falls. This year, our calendar is more generous. Labor Day falls a little earlier and the rating day allows for more opportunity and flexibility in the calendar than we had in particular last year. Last year was a very tight calendar. This year does allow for some more opportunity in the calendar. So we are looking to open the day after Labor Day on September 5th with our staff development day, and first student day of student attendance would be September 6th. We're looking at November 7th, which is also election day, as our second superintendent's conference day. The November recess for Thanksgiving, we're looking to include the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So it would be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for Thanksgiving recess. November 1st and 7th are tied together with the elementary program for the half-day report cards and staff development day, together with parent-teacher conference days. Those days are on the 7th and the 8th. We're proposing a winter recess that would include December 25th through the 29th, a midwinter recess in February, the 19th through the 23rd, our third superintendent's conference day on March 8th, a longer spring recess this year, which would start on Friday, March 29th and go through Monday, April 8th. This does include the solar eclipse day. We appear to be in the direct path of a total solar eclipse. And this much anticipated event is expected to bring lots of visitors and tourists to our area and is projected to shut down our region right at the end of the school day. So in anticipation of that event, school districts in the region are planning to close on the Monday after the spring recess break, which would then put us back in session on Tuesday, April 9th. Finally, we're looking to have our elementary half days, June 24th and 25th, with a final staff day of June 26th. So then in summary, again, we honor the teacher workday of 186 days. Our student attendance days would then be at elementary at 183 and secondary at 186. We've listed our superintendent's conference days on the preceding page. And it results in the final calendar, which is very hard to see on the last slide, of the draft of the calendar that we'd be proposing to the Board of Education for the 23-24 school year. In this page and the next slide, you'll see this is the Erie One BOCES school calendar, and you'll see that all of our dates do align with the Erie One calendar, with the only exception is the Erie One starts a day sooner because they start their superintendent's conference days before Labor Day. And the only other difference is that they've built into their calendar the opportunity to be off the day prior to Memorial Day weekend. But otherwise, our calendar does align with the Erie One calendar to support our students who do take instruction opportunities with Erie One. So that is the calendar in a nutshell. And I don't know if anyone has any questions about how the calendar is built or the recommendations that have been made by the calendar committee.
I do have one, because I didn't notice it before, but if, for the day before Memorial, the Friday before Memorial Day, for all our students that would be going out to a CTE program, what do we do with them that day?
So they stay back here at school, and there's opportunities for them to, in some cases, they spend half their day here for classes anyway. And if it's the other half of the day, there might be some work that they can do here and get caught up, or they may be excused for the remainder of the day.
I could shed a little more clarity to that day as well. That is not a set in stone day.
Okay, is it a floating
That is
one?
a teacher contracted floating day. So as long as there are, for Erie One BOCES, if there is one remaining school emergency closure day, that day will be off. If the district uses all of their snow days, that is the first day that gets removed back. So it is a kind of a floating day.
Gotcha. That's interesting.
Thank you for that clarification.
I'm sure that they didn't clarify that for you.
Mrs. Ballas, what was the discussion? I didn't quite follow it. For what it's worth, I fully support referencing Columbus Day in accordance with the Federal Proclamation of Indigenous Peoples Day. But what was the discussion? I mean, is that part of the proposal for the calendar, or is it not?
Yeah, so last year and previous years, if you recall, the Sweet Home School District calendar just referred to that day as Columbus Day.
Right.
And we know that there have been proclamations, federal and state proclamations, to also honor that day as Indigenous Peoples Day.
Right.
So we did have the conversation through the DEI committee about looking at that day and ensure from shoring up from a policy perspective, making sure that day was reflective of Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day. There was conversation about whether or not the day should just be Indigenous Peoples Day or National Heritage Day or some other name, or whether it should remain exclusively Columbus Day. And I think there was there were lots of different opinions on what it could be. But I think in the end, the majority believe that in terms of complying with state and federal policy, that to name the day as the federal and state governments have issued as Columbus/Indigenous Peoples Day.
Okay.
There
Thank
are
you.
some districts who go exclusively Indigenous Peoples Day.
Right.
And some who've remained exclusively Columbus Day. And there was a belief that to be most inclusive would be to provide both opportunities on our school calendar.
That's fair. Thank you.
Yep, for sure. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you. Thanks for all the
Thank you.
work in that committee.
For
It's a
sure.
lot of
Thank you.
work.
Thank you, Mrs. Bayless. So just a couple quick updates. As we were coming onto the floor tonight, we were getting emails regarding the New York State budget being passed and coming through. Some bills started to come through as we were basically entering the floor tonight, and NISBA was sending out emails regarding them as well. What we do know is that our foundation aid is maintained as was in our previous run, our estimated run. The set aside, the foundation aid set aside for high impact tutoring was thrown out by the legislature. So we appreciate that they take our foundation aid and then they start to tell us exactly what we have to do with it. That's called the set aside. So the set aside was removed for high impact tutoring. I think there was a lot of questions on what high impact tutoring was, and that's why it didn't make it through. There was some added funding for UPK programming, but we did not receive any of that added funding. And maybe that's a question that might come up Thursday with Senator Gallivan, but we'll look into that a little bit more. The maximum earnings cap for New York State retirees, school retirees, and school employees was also lifted for another year, and that will expire on June 30th, 2024. So a lot of the things that we saw that were going to be included in the budget, there were, and there's no major surprises so far that have come out but I think full approval might happen by the end of the week, I would say.
Yeah,
Both
the only other piece, there was some discussion that capital outlay projects would bump to $250,000. That didn't make it through to the executive budget. They remain at $100,000, which is what we had budgeted for.
Was there anything in there, I don't know where I read it, about giving all kids breakfast, lunch?
Yeah,
There
it
was
didn't
something,
go.
it didn't.
Well, didn't make it through, but what I will say is there's been additional funding added to schools that qualify for the community eligible program, which we are a part of. So I would imagine there was some talk about that potentially, obviously going away, but with the funding added to that, we'll go through the application process again. And I would imagine, given our economic makeup and our demographic makeup, that we would continue in that program and all of our kids would eat free for both breakfast and lunch.
For that program, there's a form that parents need to sign, right, and send back.
We traditionally send out a free and reduced lunch form. We ask that everybody does that because not only does it help us get that funding, but it helps with our aid as well.
So not as easy this time.
Hold on one second. Let's try again.
I only have a couple more, so if I have to, can wing it. There it goes. Okay. We're very proud that May is a very busy month here at Sweet Home, and I thought tonight we could highlight our music program and music concert season. Some of the things that we're really proud of will be happening all in the middle school auditorium this May. So pretty much every week there will be a series of concerts at all levels, from orchestra to band to chorus, jazz, wind ensemble, you name it. The music department will be very busy this spring and throughout the month of May. So I encourage all of our community to attend a concert at the middle school. The work of our students and the music department is just fantastic, and can't wait to attend some of those events. So hope to see everybody there throughout the month of May. I know it was mentioned tonight by Mr. Johnson, our building use committee will be meeting. We were supposed to meet on Thursday, but we moved that meeting to Monday. We're trying to move it to Monday because Mr. Feldman and I were invited to a meeting with Senator Gallivan on Thursday. So we're trying to switch it around. But we were given a task at the last meeting, and especially thank you to Mrs. Battaglia's input, to go back and come up with ideas on improving the overall student experience in all of our elementary buildings where we are having spacing issues in everywhere from our classrooms to our cafeterias. So we have tasked the committee with coming up with ideas for improving the lunch experience or what the ideal lunch experience should look like at Sweet Home. And then ideas for building use for special programs as well, because a lot of our special programming is happening in our cafeterias right now due to lack of space. Long-term, the committee is looking at our enrollment and enrollment studies and going to make recommendations as far as where we should go with our upcoming building projects. Those building projects or capital projects are already in the works as we are in the idea stage right now. We have met with our architects in all 4 of our elementary buildings. The principals have put wish lists together of what they would like out of their building project and also what they must have out of their building project based on the building condition survey for each building. So a lot of the building condition survey items are stuff that the public doesn't see, like HVAC, mechanicals, roofing, that sort of thing, windows. But we recognize, and so do our architects, that our next focus for our capital project will most likely be on our elementary buildings. And whether that is, every idea is on the table, whether that is expansion at our elementary buildings, especially Maple Mere and Glendale seem to be where it's critical right now, Or is it a complete remodel of our elementary buildings to fall in line with 21st century learning that would fall in line with our strategic plan that will be presented next month? So a lot of ideas on the board. One of the things is it's a good problem to have that our enrollment continues to increase and that we're projecting enrollment increases over the next 10 years. So we'll continue to work as a committee. We've met often. We're going to continue to meet, and we're excited about this work because it could really reshape how our elementary buildings look and really prepare our students better for a better future. So excited about this work, but we know there's a lot of work ahead. And then this is also a busy time for board meetings as well as we wrap up the school year. We had their budget hearing, district vote tonight, calendar presentation. Next week, we're going to have students from the art show come in, our award-winning students in photography, present to the board. Dr. Wilson will have a update on science and math curriculum that she's been working hard with our teachers on, and we'll have a presentation for the board on that. And then Ms. Bayless will have a information for the board on the safety code of conduct presentation and public hearing as well. June is also going to be a very exciting month here at our board meetings. We are very excited that our strategic plan that's been in development for a year with Dr. Wilson leading that effort is ready to be presented, and we're excited about the outcome. And I'll just say one of the highlights of it, and the board knows this, but the public should know as well, the amount of community input into this plan was unprecedented. BOCES has never seen the amount of community input that has been generated by a particular strategic plan in a district. So, and they do this work all the time. So we're super excited to present because our entire community has embraced it and inputted into it. We'll also have a presentation on from Mrs. Bayless leading that effort with DEI and what the work of our district-wide committee has done this year and the 5 subcommittees have done, which has been remarkable because all stakeholder groups, parents, students, administrators, teachers, staff, and board members, of course, have been involved in this work and making positive difference and positive change in the district. We'll also have our retirement and tenure reception in June. A presentation from Mr. Feldman on attendance and wellness, and we'll wrap up with a presentation on what the Building Use Committee came through. So it's going to be a busy couple of months, but a culmination of a lot of the hard work that the district has done, starting with the guidance from the board, which we really appreciate. And that is what we have tonight. So I don't know if there's any
questions.
Still only have 2 meetings per month, right?
Huh?
So we still only have 2 meetings, right?
All right.
I do have, well, I don't know if it's a question or statement, informational item, I don't know. Chef, they would like to do their presentations for their awards at our June study session.
Maybe we'll do 3 meetings in June.
I know I did, didn't I?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. That is
So, and maybe we can consider front loading those award presentations, considering how long that meeting might go. But yeah, just a.
maybe we can talk about that maybe in our June agenda setting.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, agenda setting. So I'm just going to put it on your plate and you guys can decide what you want to do with it.
Okay.
It's a nice part to not being on the agenda setting committee. They also want to know, it's a question, not a statement, but want to know if we want any feedback reporting out on the mini grants that they awarded. I know it's, okay.
Yep.
So there you go. There's something else to try and work into.
So maybe we'll have to talk about maybe a third. I mean, we've got a lot to cram into 2 meetings, and I don't want to shortchange anyone. So
Right.
that's going to have to be a discussion we have
We can do that.
if people are available.
Nowhere better to be on a Tuesday.
All right. Tuesdays. All right. Dr. Janestri mentioned a lot of our upcoming events. And that takes us to new business that we'll be voting on next week. First is class placements. There's 500 pages of special ed this month that I'm reading through. I don't know if you've gotten through it, Scott, but
No,
I'm getting through it. I'll have it done by next week for everybody. B is our monthly financial reports. C is our bids for health and medical supplies, emergency transportation bid, athletic and physical education supplies. Anything, any questions? D is our request for proposal, our printer management, a remote print access. E is our district attendance calendar, our district payroll calendar, and district holiday calendar. F is our corrective action plan. Could you maybe just speak about that a little bit, Mr. Feldman?
Which corrective action?
The state controller's report.
Sure. So the state controller's audit was released last month sometime. As part of that, we have 90 days to issue a board-approved corrective action plan. The state controller's audit per regulation can be found really in two places. It can be found on the state controller's website. It can also be found on the district website on the district business office page. That's a button right there. You can kind of see that. You can see also our response to the audit findings and then our corrective action plan, which you have here in front of you. The corrective action plan addresses the two recommendations really in the audit. One about surplus fund balance exceeding the statutory limit, and the second about how the board and district officials should adopt realistic budgets and ensure year-to-year encumbrances are valid. So we've addressed that. The corrective action plan has been vetted certainly by Mike and I. We've talked about it, but we've also shared it with our audit committee. Our audit committee has given it a thumbs up, which is why it is now to you. It is on the district website on the Board of Education page that for the public to see at any point in time. And then lastly, once and if it's approved, we need to, excuse me, we need to then submit it to the state office, state controller's office, as well as the Commissioner of Education, and keep it posted on our website, which we'll certainly do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just have a comment. I want to thank you for putting it in there in the plan, is because the controller's office called us out for our debt reserve, yet you mentioned it in here that they've got a specific controller opinion 95-24 that says we can do exactly what they're calling us out for doing. So they're contradicting themselves. And I'm glad you noted that.
Yeah, so it was a finding in our last state controller's audit as well. In 2016, it was due to a misstep in aid that's explained in both the report and our letter. We also addressed it in our response to the state controller's office, that we felt as though what we were doing was prudent based upon this ruling, based upon the opinion of our external auditor. And we were also very disappointed that we, when the auditors were on site, we gave them a very detailed plan about how, per regulation, that debt service reserve will be spent down to zero and offset the local share in regards to that particular capital improvement project. And that never made it into the report.
Easy.
All right, next is our corrective action plan in response to the internal audit. Questions? Okay. H is our revised policy, our second reading. I is our annual district vote. We have the chief election inspector. J is our BOCES Dexter Sweet Home contract. Can you just explain a little about that one too?
Sure. It's not.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
You start.
That's a nice little dance.
I'm sorry. I didn't know. You looked at me and I didn't realize.
I thought you asked me. So
Who had the last one? Dr. Janestri.
yeah. So I will say Mr. Feldman has done a great job negotiating a new lease with BOCES. It is a 3-year lease for Dexter Terrace. In that lease is an out for the district with a year's notice to BOCES that in case we need that building for additional space, whether it be grade level, whether it be for housing an elementary school in case of a major renovation, that we could take that building with a year's notice. So it is a 3-year lease, but we have that out in it, and it maintains pretty much the same pricing, except we've added the annex. They've asked to use the annex, and that will generate $2,000 more a month.
Correct. It's an extension of the current lease, adding $2,000 a month in additional rent for the annex. We have a draft of it now. There was an error in it that we noticed. We're waiting for it to come back, and it will be on the agenda for next week. Obviously, if you're comfortable in voting on it, then that would be great. If you're not, we can certainly push it off into June.
Did we grant BOCES an out?
Same, it's the same on both, sorry. It's
The same on both?
sides.
Thank you both.
Where do they want to go?
I don't know. They gave us one. I was just curious.
K is our
They're gonna move in.
partial real property tax exemption for volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers. L is our disposal of obsolete property. Any questions? All right, that takes us to informational items. Ms.
Hi, everyone. So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you all for bearing with me and being patient. I know the last couple of meetings, I've just like problem after problem. So I just want to say thank you for that. So since the last time I spoke, there have been a couple of different things that we've done. So last time I talked about the Senate vacancy in student government due to Connie Chen leaving, unfortunately. So we had our full group meeting where we interviewed 3 sophomores who were all vying for this spot of senator. We asked them to talk a little bit about themselves and what they hope to contribute to our organization. We asked what the first thing they would do if they got into that position was and how they would go about accomplishing it. After that, after we interviewed them, we had a private ballot within our own group. And we decided on sophomore Lily Fisher to become a senator in replacement for Connie because she's was our acting secretary and she was a part of student government last year. And so we're happy to have her back this year. The athletics and music and art committees have begun working on decorating for the Panther Pit. We held an art contest in which the Panther Pit would get a banner designed that would kind of symbolize Sweet Home Athletics. And we opened that submissions for that contest in the end of March. And at the end of spring break, we chose the winner who got a $100 gift card. And the winner was Hunter Tryloff, who's a junior. And we actually have the banner printed out. It's in Mrs. Bruce's room now. And we're hoping to hang that up sometime later this week on the next to the bleachers, next to the turf. So something else that we're planning on bringing back, which was one of my goals to bring back this year, is the prize wheel in the main foyer. That's something that student government brought to Sweet Home, and because of COVID, it kind of the purpose of the prize wheel got changed, but we're hoping to revert it back to what it initially was. And putting small prizes with hopefully pop-up contests and things of that nature to kind of boost school morale and get us back to where we were prior to COVID. Earth Day passed as well. And one of our goals this year was to continue what we did last year and hand out biodegradable cups with plants in it. And that's exactly what we did this year again. That was just a fun little thing to honor Earth Day. We had the meeting at Central Kitchen with Mrs. Sajak, and we kind of just discussed what has changed since last year and where we want to move from now. So we discussed honestly, like as a student myself, I can attest to the fact that the variety in school food has definitely increased. Many of my friends have noticed it as well, and the new options that we're being given, they're hit or miss as with all options, but there have been a lot of really big hits that I mentioned to Mrs. Sajak, and she told me that, you know, they're not directly in contact with the students, so they're not sure what we like or what we don't like, and so that's kind of why they're experimenting. So it was good to let them know that some of the things that they're pushing out to us are being accepted well. And she said that it's good to hear that so that they can plan accordingly for what they want to push out in following years. So that's hopefully something that we can continue annually moving forward. Glendale and Maplemere, both elementary schools invited us to present at their leadership days at the end of May. There's no, as far as I'm aware at the moment, we haven't been shared any specific topics yet, but hopefully in the upcoming weeks, we are going to put together a presentation. So that's just going to be a really fun thing. We had the Maplemere Black History presentation earlier on in the year, and now we're doing Glendale and Maplemere again. So hopefully that's something we can continue to do and branch out to the other elementary schools in the middle school in the following years. Another one of our goals before the end of the year, we want to have one more Spirit Week and hopefully an end of the year event. Perhaps nothing like super big, but just something that to end the year in a fun and memorable way. That's still in deliberation and nothing has been finalized yet, but that's definitely one of my end goals. And obviously, this was a while ago, but the Pi Day celebration at the high school, the stickers and tattoos, the pizza that was being handed out, and pieing our favorite teachers in the face. It was just a really good way to both like acknowledge Pi Day and boost school morale. And that's the kind of stuff that I personally feel that makes Sweet Home really special. And that's the kind of stuff that I hope to see in the futures, even after I graduate. And obviously the really big Bald for Bucks assembly that we had the other day, that was just a lot of fun. And shout out to Miss Mansell for really working hard and putting that together, because that was just a really cool experience. Mr. Cordy looks amazing. So it's great.
That was $11,000, I think.
Yeah, it was $11,000, which is amazing. And as Dr. Janestri said, it is concert season. As a member of Concert Chorale, I hope to see some of you guys at our concert on May 25th. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Peter.
Not much over the last couple of weeks, other than some sporting events, and I feel for the athletic department with their scheduling with all the rain.
What you talking about?
Well, you play in the rain, we don't.
You play in the rain and the snow and the sleet and the hail.
That was just one day.
That was one game.
I have a lot of stuff over the next couple of weeks, so I'll hold off till next week.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Scott.
We had a legislative team meeting. It was our last one of the year. We did discuss to some extent the upcoming legislative dinner. It's going to be a little bit of a reverse. We're going to give the legislators that are coming, the two of them, a chance to talk to us and tell them about the session that was just completed. Anyone know about that? Sorry, I'm just coming back. I attended the Twist on Tech program with the Bose reasoning. Sorry, gotta find my notes because I put them in the wrong note. It was over at the Kenton Bose's. I had never been there, even though I went to school at Kenton. It was interesting. They took the auto body repair shop out of there. We took up a lot of space, and they've added 3 new programs there instead. They've got just under 600 students in the building. They actually set it up for us in groups so we could go around, and I learned about animal science and exercise science, welding, culinary arts, and electrical systems with some of the ones I got to see. Culinary arts was tough to leave. I believe the 2 gentlemen making desserts were Sweet Home kids. Dave didn't mention that in his message, but I'm pretty sure they were Sweet Home kids. And everything there was awesome. That was pretty cool. Just the different things that they showed us as we were going around at them and how they do it was fascinating to me, the programs. And I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. It's, the Bose's programs are not what people thought of 40 years ago. They are outstanding programs that, that our kids really should be considering and understanding, the good things that they got to offer out of them. And the last one would just be today. Before we came over here today, I attended at least part of the unified basketball game. West Seneca West had some bus problems and ended up coming a half hour late. But this is the first game of the year for the kids, and they were doing. I think they had 16-8 when I left. They were doing quite well. Everybody was having fun. It was a good turnout, just like usual. The drill team did a quick performance at halftime, and I got to meet one of our therapy dogs because she was there with Mrs. Pankowski. And that would be it. I'm done. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Josh?
Well, good evening, everybody. It's good to be back. I appreciate your understanding and assistance dealing with my ugly mug up on the big screen over the last few months, or more than a few months, last more than half a year. So thank
For
you.
good?
I am. So I got back as of Friday, so I don't have much to report. Monday was the chef meeting, so I mentioned one of the big highlights. I remain continually impressed with not only their initiatives, but the sustainment for the more mature programs, right? That's one of the hardest things to do in kind of your sophomore year of any sort of organization, is keeping the things that you started alive. And they've done that in spades. Their backpack program is still running strong and running well. The prom dress program is doing the same. So they do have 2 board members that are vacant right now, and they're soliciting interest rather, for those positions right now. But other than that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Haley?
I've got a couple meetings coming up in the next week, 2 weeks, so nothing I'll share next week.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
Brian.
Brian. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah.
You guys look alike. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I had Willow Ridge on last Friday had science night. So I attended that with my kids, and that was a nice event. The highlight of the event was the bubble demonstration, which was an hour-long show put on by one individual, a young lady who incorporated dancing, lights, and then these huge bubbles. And I will just say, we've come a long way from COVID to where, we had kids encapsulated in bubbles and giant bubbles over people popping, and there were probably a lot of kids that needed showers after that. So, but it was a really nice event, and that was put on by the PTA, and they did a great job with that. The other thing, I also attended the Spring Music Festival, which was last week, Wednesday, at the middle school, and again, a great job.
That's good. Thank you. Amy?
I, like Peter, don't have much. Spent a lot of time in the uncertainty of this weather at sporting events, but my mind is a little full with stuff going on at work, so.
All right, thank you. I would just like to mention that Mr. Feldman emailed me or texted me, whatever. We have 3 candidates for our scholarship, so I'll forward all that to you, and just give me back your picks and we'll go from there. And when do you need, did we all give you checks yet?
No.
No?
June 1st.
June 1st. Okay, thank you. All right, that takes us to our next open session. Do I need to read? Okay, good. Next is personnel, teaching and administrative, as well as service. Any questions, comments? All right, with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session for matters of students.
So moved.
Second.